order, and I'm going to turn it over to Michael Reardon.
Actually, it's PJ's role on this
Oh, I'm
one.
sorry. I'm going to turn it over to PJ.
Oh, okay, great. I'm the new Michael. Just quickly, the state has come out with a new program. Basically, they're calling it a wholesale waiver agreement. We have, I'll try to dummy this down, but we have about a dozen or so old claimants on workers' comp that we pay out on an annual basis of about $80,000 or $82,000 a year. And the state normally, after a period of time, would reimburse us, not on a regular schedule, but just, basically when they felt they had some money, I guess. Workers' comp, they'd send us a check. They've come out with a new program now where they want to upfront this money. Amounts to about $1.2 million, so that it is going to be a waiver agreement, so that we would continue to pay of their lifetime, but they want to upfront the money and to limit moving forward. That's kind of the down and dirty of this program. I'll turn it over to Tony from PERMA, and before he speaks, I just want to let you know that PERMA's done one heck of a job for us. They have identified claimants that should have been identified by a prior TPA that were not for reimbursement. And they've found quite a bit of money for us over a short period of time. So that's been terrific, and we appreciate it. So, Tony, without getting too deep in the weeds, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, PJ. I appreciate that introduction. So I know I've appeared before this committee one other time before you actually joined PERMA. So we appreciate your membership. I think the program is going extremely well. This program is something that the state rolled out last year. In a nutshell, it's a whole host of older cases, a dozen or so, that have dates of accident prior to 2007. They qualified for an old section of the law that was referred to as the Second Injury Fund. It was Section 15-8. The state is now offering a complete buyout of those claims, and they're basing it on a lifetime expectancy of each claimant. So what we have in front of us, we submitted a listing of all these cases. We entered in their average 3-year spend on the medical and a 4-year spend on the medical as well, because we went back to them and asked them to incorporate 2018 into their calculations because of the COVID years. We saw a tick down in the medical treatment on some of these cases, so we didn't want the county to get shorted any money. And it actually, so the second proposal came out slightly higher. Unfortunately, because of rising interest rates, the end value was a little bit less. So the best proposal in front of us was one that was actually put forward back on March 4th. We've been given a deadline of June 8th to respond to this offer. So it's yay or nay. We either accept the offer, or if we reject it, we go back to the way things are. I will say that we actually discovered some money that had previously not been requested. So part of this proposal incorporates outstanding payments that were never requested. So we found about $85,000 that wasn't there before. So that's the good news, and that is part of the settlement. They will pay us those monies that were not previously requested. So what we have in front of us right now is a total proposed settlement of $1,205,737, and that would be a final payment on all those cases. We would no longer be requesting periodic reimbursement. PERMA would recommend that the county proceed with this settlement. It gives you the opportunity to get all the money up front. Several of these cases along the way, we might be able to settle for less money than they actually paid us. If someone becomes ineligible due to death, for obvious reasons, you don't have to give the money back. You keep the money. They're paying you literally a lifetime projection on all of these cases. Does anybody have any questions?
Should we have our own actuary take a look at the calculations to make sure that what the state is giving us is good?
Well, the calculation is based on their formula. So it's based on mortality rates on the indemnity and the average medical spend. That is the formula that they put forward. I will say that, you know, we've processed several of these. The only give and take really was to have them incorporate a prior year into the average medical, so it would raise the medical spend. Your actuary would be able to dispute their formula because it is what they're offering, essentially.
Tony, do we have the option to not accept this proposal, or is this basically going to happen regardless of our point of view?
No, you have the option to not accept it. Absolutely. And then you're in the same position you are right now today.
Supervisor Lagoni has his hand up.
So Tony, I assume the money will sit in an interest-bearing account. How does that work?
The money will actually be transferred to you electronically via ACH. So you'll have it will be processed within 30 days. That all the settlement paperwork is signed off on. You'll actually receive that money within 30 days.
We'll do what we want with that money. What is
Correct.
the average annual outlay right now?
80 to 82,000. And yeah, we will put that money in our workers' comp, savings account, so to speak. That's invest.
So we're looking at like 12 years worth of money. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
But how far behind are we in getting reimbursements, annually? Do they reimburse within the same year? How does that work?
Yeah, they do. They do. We typically will. We're only allowed to request the money back every 6 months, and sometimes that lag it could run 60 to 90 days before that money arrives after you've requested it. So at any given point in time, you're fronting this money for about 9 months currently.
And what is our worst case scenario as far as exposure in a year? Or is that hard to quantify?
Yeah, that would be hard to quantify.
Have
I
we
will
had
say
any
that-
years that were extreme? Like, I know you say average is 80. What's the highest?
We only based it on the last 3 or 4 years, which is what the state was doing as well.
And what's the highest of those 4 years?
Yeah. I look for that. Are there any other questions?
I don't have any. No, thank you.
Tony, what happens to new claims that occurred in this category going forward?
Well, there wouldn't be any. We closed this fund down back in 2010, and it's only applicable to dates of accident from 2007 or prior. So there wouldn't be anything that would arise today.
Okay.
Is there any potential, Tony, that down the line that the state would stop reimbursing us?
Yeah, and that's part of the fear. That's part of the fear. We And one component, you know, as PJ initially pointed out, we found about $85,000 that they never previously reimbursed. And our concern with that is that might be time sensitive. Technically, if you haven't requested that money within a 1 year period of time, you could be barred from requesting it. So that caveat is there as well, that we, you know, we're fine, you know, we're getting money incorporated in the settlement that potentially they could contest. But we don't want, you know, we certainly don't want that to happen.
So I support this, especially with those potential issues coming up, with the caveat that the money's stuck into a reserve account that doesn't ever get diluted or used for anything else. But it makes sense to me because the state could stop reimbursing us.
Well, we do use a reserve account. We haven't had to touch it recently, but that reserve account is used primarily if we need to touch it to pay some of these tail claims moving forward, okay? But Rob, yeah, it'll be put into that account. You know, we'll get the highest earning that we can possibly get on it, but
PJ, could it be escrowed? The amount of money that we're talking about within the account for this purpose?
I'm sorry, what was the question, Brenda?
Could it be escrowed? Could it be have a formal restriction attached to it so that we're sure that it's always there?
That I guess we'd have to find out legally if we could do that. I don't know. Just remember that basically, you know, if we get this $1.2 million, essentially it's saving us from paying out the 80-some thousand dollars per year. And, you know, that money can be used, you know, moving forward towards that. That's all. I wouldn't want to see it totally restricted. That I'm not sure that makes total sense, but.
And if someone passes away and it's restricted, then you have another issue.
Yeah, and if there is a settlement, you need to understand that if there is a settlement of some sort, and it's a good settlement, you know, that money could be used toward that, and we would put that through the insurance committee as well.
And just an additional piece there. One of the things we hope to do is track in the future the results of these cases, and as you know, as they close out, which they will, there'll be a finality to all of these cases, one way or the other, whether it's a settlement or they're no longer eligible for indemnity benefits. That you know, we're going to give you a future accounting as to how this goes. I'm trying to track the most expensive year. We took an average of the getting back to that original question. It looks like it goes as high as about 140,000 annually.
Thank you.
Okay.
14.
So basically, we would use this settlement money to pay these claims going forward instead of the state?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And just so the committee knows, right now in our workers' comp reserve, we have 3.5 million.
Okay.
So we would put this money together with that, and that is in a, yeah, it's an investment savings.
Okay, so we would need to vote on this, the committee?
I would think I'll have to bring a resolution to finance, I guess, but I don't know how you handle it at the committee level here.
Yeah, I would vote on it here that we recommend it, and then it'll be brought up to finance via resolution.
I would make that motion, Matt, that we accept the state's offer of $1.2 million moving forward.
would
Understanding
second
that
that.
there'll be no future payments.
We have a motion by Rob Begonia, second by Art Basson. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.
Okay, now Lori, do you want to take over from Fair?
Steve's gonna do it for us.
Make sure I got the right one.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay, I
Okay.
wrote a number down, so.
Every now and then we have something brought to us by CDPHP. Either there's a claim that they want to be paid, or asking us if we should pay, or they're simply telling us, hey, these have been added to the commercial contracts. A commercial contract is anything that a small group, that is any group that has under 100 people. So a community rated contract would have these benefits in them. So along the way, CDPHP and probably other insurance carriers too have decided that these benefits belong in the base contract. One of the things that the ASO does, the self-insured aspect of our plan, one of the aspects that it does is it allows us to add or not add any of these benefits that might be coming up. So these are a few of the things that have come up, and some of them are need answers right away, and other ones we can shelve until we have a chance to sit down and actually talk about them. I'm going to skip the first one, virtual behavioral health, because after discussing it with the HR department, we've decided it's a secondary concern at this point. And we could get into why we think that is, but we're going to jump right to the second issue, which is continuous glucose monitors. I think we've talked about this before, and we were told, this was in a meeting in November, I was told to go back and come back with some numbers. And a continuous glucose monitor is, you've probably seen them advertised. You stick them on your body and it keeps a running tally of what your blood sugar is. And the data shows that people who use the diabetics that use these continuous glucose monitors have better control over their diabetes and better control over their blood sugars and better health. So less likely to have heart attacks, strokes, etc. We currently offer these through the medical plan, and this is why I was told to get numbers. We currently offer these through the medical plan through CDPHP, and our proposal is to add them, to make them available on the prescription drug plan as well. And part of that is because they're slightly less expensive on the prescription drug plan. It saves the county a little bit of money. Also makes it a little easier for the employee to pick up, because they can simply pick them up at the pharmacy instead of ordering them from the durable medical equipment provider from our medical contract. After looking at all the data, we think this is a really good idea. It's something that's already being offered. We're simply making it easier for people to get, and there's no cost disadvantage to the county to do this. So that's the proposal, is should we add continuous glucose monitors to the prescription drug plan, available to the prescription drug plan, where they're currently excluded. Should I go on to the next thing, or did you want to talk about this first?
Steve, it's Jim. Was this part, we just put the RFP out for the new prescription? Is this part of that, or how do we have to amend that then if we approve this?
No, we wouldn't have to amend the RFP. It would be included in our summary plan. It would just be a part of what they would have to match. Hey Kelly, there was a page in between the virtual and the cardiac rehab that actually was the glucose monitors, excuse me. There was a whole section.
I don't have it. That's
Oh,
why I was
okay.
like, you saw me frantically.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Yeah, that's what
like,
Lori and I were just talking about. Because that Steve had done the current utilization and the pricing. Would you like for us to scan that to you right now? Would that, just in case that page?
If you want to pull it up, if you have it right there.
Yeah.
Just go ahead and share it.
I don't know. You don't have it. It's not on here.
No,
Yeah, no,
right.
it's not on here to pull up.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Getting to Jim's request is that I think the biggest part of the RFP for the prescription drug for the PBM is going going to be based on the, the repricing. We send them a file of what we've paid for drugs over the past 2 years. And then they come back and say, look, we could have priced it at this level. And none of the continuous glucose monitors will be in there because they were all filled on the prescription, on the medical side. But it's a good question. We can certainly bring it up and say, look, what's it going to cost for us to have a Dexcom? You may have seen, there's basically two types. There's a Dexcom, which is they're very different. There's the Freestyle Libre, which is basically use your phone to check what the thing is. And then there's the Dexcom, which is a more complicated device, which keeps a continuous feed of information to both you and your doctor. That's the more expensive one. And those tend to be for diabetics for what do they call them? Number 1 and number 2, not the one you become when you're older. It tends to be for the
Just anecdotally, my oldest daughter's type 1 diabetic for 20 years. Has this, and her health and her numbers have dramatically improved when she added this to her regimen. So it does work. It does make your health a lot better. And she has the Dexcom one that sends it to her phone. It tells her when she's high or low. It's really amazing.
Yeah, it is an amazing device. And the other one could be used for type 2 that don't have the kind of severe swings. Those are much less expensive, probably about 20%, but the person does not have as serious a diabetic issue, and it keeps them from doing the 2 or 3 finger sticks. The type 1 have a much more serious health issue and need to be watched more closely, and that's where the Dexcom comes in. And everything we've heard from it has showed that it improves. All the studies show that it improves control and maintenance of their diabetes. Yes, Michael.
I just wanted to say that as far as providing the prescription coverage, the actual pricing for the RFP, it doesn't restrict us to only having to send CDPHP information or ProAct information, because remember we had discussed about sharing the CanRx pricing as well. So we could include the pricing for those monitors and require for them to reprice those. So. And my second concern was, we just met with CDPHP in our last health insurance committee meeting, and they talked about rising obesity costs and concerns with that for our population, as well as diabetes is one of our top 3.
So Stephen, if we're offering it, why wouldn't we offer it through the?
It makes a lot of sense to do it. I mean,
why? I don't even understand how there's a discussion on this. What's the point?
Yeah. It's just for background information. I think.
And are a lot of people utilizing this?
No, actually not.
Do they not know about it, or?
I think that probably it's just for the last year or 2 that they just haven't started it. And to be honest, our population tends to be a little recalcitrant as far as trying something new. I think once they try it, for type 1 diabetics, I think there's no problem. They probably jump right on something like the Dexcom because they need it to function every day in some way. For the type 2 diabetic, they're sort of getting by, their blood sugar isn't very good, and the people who aren't very good at maintaining it are reluctant to take the next step, I think. On the other hand, the Libre Freestyle for a type 2 diabetic, once you try it, I've tried it, that's why I know, is that it's really quite an eye-opener, because all of a sudden you see the data and you're like, wow, I really can control my blood sugar.
So long term, it's going to save us money anyway, correct?
I think it will, yeah.
Well, maybe there should be some sort of a presentation to those individuals that aren't really aware of it and that could possibly want to jump on board with this.
Yeah, anytime we change over in these types of things, we send out education materials to inform individuals of that. And then we can certainly reach out to ProAct. The unfortunate part of this is that employees don't want to hear it necessarily from us, because they get a little weirded out thinking that there are staff that know about their diagnosis. So we work with ProAct in order for them to do the reach out so their case managers can assist with the process.
Great.
So do we need to vote on this? Are you voting on this one first?
So,
I'll make that motion that we add these
Continuous
monitors
glucose
to the
monitors,
prescription
right.
plan.
okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll
Adam?
second that.
Second, our Basson, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And I think Rob's idea of making this an average, something that we advertise is a great idea. Because we do have a lot of diabetics in the population, or pre-diabetics, which can also use it. The second thing I want to talk about is the suspension. It's called the suspension of utilization review for moving patients from inpatient to, in other words, they're in the hospital and moving them to a skilled nursing facility or a rehab facility. And normally what happens is when you're an inpatient and you're either going to, not being released yet, you're going to a rehab center or you're going to a skilled nursing facility. A rehab center might be for something like a hip replacement. A skilled nursing facility might be for cardiac rehab that you won't be able to do. So two different situations. And what happened is the New York State Department of Financial Services issued a letter in January saying, look, we're giving you permission to not have to do a utilization review on every single one of these. So you can just send the person, if the doctor says it's a good idea, directly to rehab or to a skilled nursing facility. So in other words, it's just an interim step that the Department of Financial Services suggests that we take. And the reason they suggested this is because of the shortage of hospital beds. And so what they're trying to do is to get folks from the hospital to the skilled nursing facility without the extra step of the insurance company doing the utilization review, which can take 2 or 3 days. So it makes sense. It does not apply to self-funded plans. CDPHP is strongly, I'm just reading what they said here, CDPHP is strongly encouraging self-funded plans to adopt this interim suspension in order to assist acute care facilities in meeting the increased demands of patients. So we can opt out of this and still require utilization review, or we can go ahead with it. And when CDPHP says it's no longer an issue, we can go back and do what we're doing right now. Does that make sense? It was kind of complicated.
Seems to make sense to opt into this.
Is that a motion, Art?
Let's consider that a motion.
Okay. Anybody want to second the?
Just one question, Stephen. Is there any possibility that there would be, the insurance company would decline to pay, is more likely to decline to pay for something if there hasn't been a utilization review?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know the answer to that. I think we should bring it up with CDPHP. They're the ones that are recommending this. So I didn't ask the specific question that whether they would refuse to pay for it because of the lack of review. I think they're putting it in their contract, or us putting it in the Columbia County contract would mean that we're paying for it. They don't have, it's really up to the county, since it's self-insured, whether it's going to be paid or not. CDPHP could decline something, for instance, there's a hypothetical, and we could say, no, we're going to pay for that. So I don't think that's going to come into play, but I could get clarification for you, Brenda, if you'd like me to.
Well, and then, I guess prior to voting, should we get that clarification? Is this time sensitive?
Yeah, by June 1, it's time sensitive.
Well, I guess I'm confused by one thing. If this is a self-funded plan and we pay for it anyway, if CDPHP doesn't want to pay for it, we're still paying for it, right?
Yes.
So Steve,
Yes.
is part of the election though, it's my understanding that what is happening is the state sent them a letter saying that the review is not necessary anymore because it helped them meet their mandates. So the state is saying notify all of your people that we're not going to do this review anymore. But
Correct.
because we're self-insured, we can say that's great that you want to do that, but we're telling you as a county that we still want it. So therefore, we're opting for that to become. Otherwise, if we don't do anything, they're going to take the review out.
Okay.
So what they're deciding is whether or not we want to continue with that review.
Thank
Because
you.
if so, then we need to say, yeah, no, sorry, we want to continue with that. Correct?
Michael is more articulate on this than I was. Thank
No,
you.
no, no,
That's
it's all
exactly
Lori.
right.
It's all
Was she
just-
whispering in your ear?
My right arm. Yeah.
So there doesn't seem to be any advantage at this point to continuing with the review. If the state is saying it's no longer required, the insurance company is notifying us and they're not notifying us with a negative or qualified opinion, then there doesn't seem to be any reason not to do it.
I agree.
Okay,
I agree. So,
thank you for the clarification.
So Art, are you still okay with your motion?
I am.
I have a second then,
All right,
Adams.
further discussion? All in favor?
I
Opposed? Carried.
okay, the last one we're going to talk about is the something called orthotics. And I think we all know that orthotics are devices that you put within your shoe.
It's
And,
cardiac rehab, Steve. That's our last thing.
oh, I was going to talk about orthotics. Okay.
Oh, okay. Well, that wasn't on the list. Okay.
Oh, yeah, that they just came to us with a claim on orthotic. You want me to start with the cardiac rehab?
Yeah, we only got 20 minutes before our next meeting, so.
Do cardiac rehab.
All right, cardiac rehab. CDPHP is recommending, and they're putting in their base contract, that we remove the cost share for cardiac rehab. Cardiac rehab is usually about 30 to 60 visits, and every one of them would require a copay on the part of the employee. So it's unusual, and I think they're saying about a third of the people go to cardiac rehab. Whereas what they find is that your 5-year life expectancy improves by 40% if you actually go to cardiac rehab. The thing is, you'd have to go to a cardiac rehab location. I think they're all in Albany, St. Peter's, and Albany Med. And so people don't do it. And so what CDPHP is telling us is that, look, if you take out the cost, maybe people will go to cardiac rehab and extend their lives, and they're less likely to have another cardiac event. In other words, what they're saying is that there's two parts of cardiac surgery, the valves, bypass surgery, all that stuff is fantastic and it saves somebody's life. They're saying, however, what people don't realize and what they don't follow through on is the second part, which is you have to strengthen the heart and whatever else is around it that makes it work. I don't know what that is, but they're saying that if you don't do that, your chance of having another heart attack in the next 5 years is vastly greater. So they're saying maybe if we remove the copays, we will get better compliance in the cardiac rehab area. So they have different ways of doing this, but like home-based tele-rehab, and their success rate of getting people enrolled, they say, is quite high. They say it's over 80%. That seems a little unbelievable to me, but I don't think they're telling me something that isn't true. So, and so they're suggesting that we drop the copays, basically. Now, understand the copays are what, roughly 25 bucks, right? So 25 bucks times 30, that's $600 and some. Double that if they go for 60 days. So it is some financial impact. They look back and they found that last year, 2 members in our population would have been eligible for the service. So it's in terms of urgency. I personally don't see it as huge because only 2 members would have been eligible. Neither of them participated in cardiac rehab, by the way. And it may be a distance thing. It may be the cost of going to cardiac rehab. It may be they're just not taking care of themselves. This one, I'm not 100% sure that it's necessary, or, you know, it's CDPHP is now included in their base contracts on commercial plans. They've taken away the copay to try to get people to show up more often. So I suggest, if I may, to put this one on the back burner for now, and we can discuss it next time, and maybe have somebody from CDPHP talk about it.
Okay. I mean, we're not talking about a huge number of employees who are in this category.
Right, out of the cardiac incidents that happened in 2021, only 2 employees qualified for the program. Neither one attended, but we certainly can't confirm whether that was based on lack of education, you know, how it was explained to the individuals. You know, this would certainly come through their physicians and through CDPHP, not through county education on this policy. But it would have been a waiver of $50 had they taken part.
Michael, is $50 per session?
It's just the traditional copay for a specialist, which I believe is $40.
Oh, I see.
25. Well, 25.
Yeah,
I
25
didn't know
each.
if they would up it to 40.
Right, but
even
it's each visit, and they
Right.
will do like
multiple
25
visits.
to 30 visits, maybe.
Right. So that's where your 600 is.
Right.
But that seems to me to be so much less than a cardiac event. So it seems to me like this is spending money prophylactically to make sure that that doesn't happen. And as you say, it's such a small amount of money.
Right, for a very defined group of employees.
Right.
A very small number of employees. I would think this is a good thing for us to include. It doesn't sound like it's going to be terribly expensive, and it might encourage the individuals affected to take advantage of the program. And CDPHP seems to be encouraging their non-self-funded program base to do this by including it. Go ahead and include it.
I
Seems like the
agree.
right thing to do.
I agree as well.
So do I.
So can I have a motion that we?
I'll make the motion that we include it.
Rob Ligonia, second.
Adams?
Adams. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. See? Steve?
Okay, should I talk about the orthotics, or should we cut it off here, Michael?
It's 10:45 or 11.
We need to get on the next meeting within the next 5 minutes. So if you can do it within 5.
Oh,
Good to
okay.
go.
So, but
We have
Steve, you didn't discuss virtual behavioral. So unless you're
Oh.
referring that over.
I would like to, I would prefer to talk about that in the context of telehealth overall, not just mental health. So I'd like to do that at the next meeting if possible. The last issue is just very quickly is that someone has put in a claim for orthotics. The county has never covered that, and it's only recently been covered in any insurance plan. Again, I don't recommend it at this point because it's people don't go to the doctor. This is my thinking. People don't go to the doctor unless they have to, but people buy shoes and orthotics just to try to see if they work possibly. There are some good arguments for doing these custom orthotics or custom. Some people have had diabetes, have a malformed foot, or they've had an amputation. Those are all legitimate issues that need to have special shoes or devices or inserts to help them walk. Again, I think this is an issue I would prefer to see somebody from the insurance company tell us why they think this is a good idea. So I would suggest that we table this one as well as the telehealth until we have a little more information. And at this point, that means that we would be denying a claim that someone has put in for custom orthotics.
I would agree with Steven. I can just give you my own personal experience. Orthotics are pushed by everybody now. You go to the chiropractor, they want you to get orthotics. You go to the foot doctor, get orthotics. Nobody wears them. They're incredibly uncomfortable unless it's an extreme case. I would say we should table that as well.
Okay. Everybody in agreement?
That's it for now.
All right. Anything else, Michael? All right. So we need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion. We adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you, everybody.
Carried.
Take care.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
Steve.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Meeting to order. And I'm going to turn it over to Matt Vanderbeck, who's our auditor for this particular project.
Okay, thanks, Matt. So we completed the audit of the Columbia Tobacco Asset Securitization Corporation for 2021. So I'm here to present the results of that audit and any other comments that I wanted to communicate with this group. So from a financial statement standpoint, I have them up on the screen. They were for last year through December 31st of 2021. It's going to flip to the opinion. So we have our opinion for the audit that we prepared. No issues with carrying out the audit or any of the financial information that you see in the financial statements. So this is a standard report. It got a little larger this year due to some changes in auditing standards, but for the most part, it just says everything is in order. And we have an unmodified opinion. We also, we'll get to in a few minutes, we're required to comment on your internal controls and compliance. So there's a report in the back of the document that addresses that. You can see here the date, March 29th of 2022. So that's when we issued the report. It's due to be filed by March 31st. So with the transition, with Jim coming on board, with BJ's oversight of this entity, I think the coordination and being able to pick up where things were left off from the prior year, as far as being able to put these financial to really drive the ship as far as making sure all the information is in the right place and we have all the confirmations and correspond. So that all I thought worked out pretty well, despite the fact that you had, Jim taking a look at it for the first time. So we thought that process went well. We have a comment in the back related to controls that for you guys to consider, but I wouldn't say that the comment that we have necessarily says anything about the quality of your accounting abilities. It's just more of a timing mechanism of how quickly these financial statements have to get out and just having the transition taking place this year. So as you recall, this audit pretty much has been on autopilot over the last few years because there's not a lot of new activity when you look at these financial statements, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute. Pretty much things remain pretty much the same. Just trying to get to the page here. Hold on a second. So that's what I'm saying with as far as autopilot, because the activity pretty much is just being rolled forward over the over the last several years. So when you look at 2021 compared to 2020, pretty much your assets remained very consistent at $1.9 million. You have this large deficit of 19.1 million that we're aware of. That was created from the beginning of the formation of this entity, and you have interest that accrues on these bonds that in some cases exceeds the tobacco revenue that you received during the year, which then impacts your equity. And you can see for the current year, 2021 versus 2020, you had total expenditures in excess of revenue of $427,000, where it was about $469,000 the year before. So it's better than the year before, but it's still not enough of revenue to cover the expenses, primarily interest, which causes there to be an increase in your deficit. Now, we'll see in a few minutes the impact of your paying down of the bonds. I mean, you have continued to pay more than what's been required on the bonds. So you continue to pay down the bond as much as you can to reduce the interest cost. And you'll see that in a minute as far as your amortization tables. The P&L, I just wanted to point out here, when I say you had a reduction of $427,000, you can see why. Here's the 1.4 of interest expense. A good portion of this interest expense is being accrued on the 2005 bonds. So while you're paying down the 2000 series, you have the 2005. You won't start paying that until you finish the 2000. So then the interest just continues to accrue on that outstanding bond. So you have this deficit of 427. And you can see the revenue, you still generated almost $1 million of revenue from tobacco settlement proceeds. That number has increased, which I'm going to show you in just a minute. I'm going to stick with that for a minute. So that number has actually gone up where it had dipped a few years ago down, and then over the COVID period has went back up. I'm going to show you another sheet that's done. Hopefully you can see it. It's not too busy. But the main thing here is we look at the end of the year, you have to estimate how much written receivables that you have. So that would be the amount that you expect to collect in 2022. You book a receivable in 2021. All this documentation here is management calculates an estimate of what they think they're going to get and book it as a receivable. And when you do that calculation, it's been done over a period of, say, 5 years or even more years to come up with an average and come up with an estimate. But what this is saying is your actual revenue, if I want to point out in the last 2 years, for instance, in 2019, you received $890,000. That was your actual revenue amount paid. In 2020, it was $963,000. So your receivables on the books have been lower. You've estimated $786,000, $828,000. So what happens is by having a lower receivable estimate, when you collect that additional cash, it ends up getting flowed through the current year, and that's why your revenue is about $999,000, because some of the money that in theory should have been recorded prior year flows through the current year because your estimate is on the lower side for your receivables. Now that's not intentional. That's just the way the math works. So you have a policy of accruing over an average over a period of time. But since the average is bringing you down due to recent years activities, because your payments had been down into 700,016, 800,000 in 217, 776,000 in 2018. Now you're at the 800 or almost 900,000, $1 million of receipts going up. So I asked Jim and PJ to consider when they do the 2022 calculations, probably averaging a more recent time period. So then the receivable is a little bit higher. So it'd be closer to what you actually collect. So I don't know, before I keep going, I don't know if anyone had to ask me any questions. This page is just showing you the amortization. So you have a required schedule and you have a optional schedule. You can see because of the way that you've been paying more than what's required, if you didn't make payments, you know, to 2032, you've already accelerated your payments. That's how far ahead you are on the required schedule. And this year in particular, you paid an extra $545,000 of principal to get you even further in advance of this required schedule, which is important because it's driving down your interest cost. And you can see you're making some good progress on the payments of this bond at this point. The Series 2005 is the one that just grows until you start to have the opportunity to pay it down once you pay back the 2000.
Hey, Matt, just a quick question.
Yep.
Do you remember when we started this, what the total amount was at that point in time? I mean, we're down to 21 million. It wasn't around 30.
It had to have been. I mean, I think so, PJ. That sounds.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to look it up too, but
yeah, I mean, I'm thinking if I'm thinking back, and I've seen these for, I don't know, 10 years.
Yeah.
I'm thinking it had to be over 30.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, your approach of paying this down. I mean, I know there's always this concern. Okay, what happens when the tobacco revenue, potentially just goes away? I mean, the way that you're doing this, you're really accelerates, which is a very good thing. So it seems to be working out, and recent activity is positive from a tobacco standpoint. We'll see what it is this year, but that's the trend. So really, other than those items, the rest of the financial statements are the same. The one item we have here, which again, I have to bring it to your attention because it's something that we have in the report that is control related. But I think when we do the audit, optimally, we want management to hand us something over that is complete and it has everything in it. And we were in a pattern in recent years where you had sufficient time and resources to be able to just basically hand over the workbook to us, and everything would be, in the right place, and it would take a little less effort from our perspective as far as what had to be done to put the financial statements together. And then what we're also looking for is that there's a second level of review. So whoever's putting together the financials, the cash reconciliations, whoever's posting all that activity, you always got to have that extra layer of review to make sure nothing is missed. Because when we get it, we would hope that you've already taken a good look at it and everything's in good shape, and there shouldn't be anything really that was missed as part of your controls. This year, with again, there's transition and there's resources that had to be deployed in wherever you needed them based on priorities. We felt that while you were able to pull things together, you didn't necessarily have that second level of you didn't have that time built into the process to allow for the second level of review to make sure everything is going to be signed off on. So this one comment is focusing on that. So going forward, if you could just make sure when you finish going through the recs and the financial statement preparation, you have someone just sign off, whether it be Jim signing off on it, as far as what's being done by his team, that would be something we're looking for in the upcoming year. And it's an easy thing to do because I think you have the process down pretty well as far as putting things together at this point. So that was my one item I had to identify in the report and communicate with you. We had no other issues that we had. And that's pretty much all I had to go through with you related to this audit. So I don't know if anyone has any questions. So if there's no questions, that's pretty much what I had to present.
Jim, did you want to bring up the budget part or?
Yeah, we can, I don't know if we need Matt there for that, but we can vote on the budget, the 23 budget in this meeting also.
Okay. Is that part of the report or?
No,
gonna-
I'll,
He's
Okay,
gonna pull it up.
right.
Did anybody have any questions for Matt Vanderbeck or?
Just for a reference point, where does this report go?
This gets filed with your Paris reporting for New York State. So it's something that has to be filed with them by March 31st. So that's something that you have to do each year.
yeah, we filed that with the state. I think it's by the same deadline. We have to have it by the end of March, filed with the authority's budget office is where it's filed with.
Oh, ABO, okay.
And just because I'm new to this committee, do we pay Matt and his team to do these independent audits?
We do. You can, if
They pay me very
see
well.
the budget that's up there, that's the professional fees that's on the budget.
Okay. And Matthew, are you a flat rate? So it sounds like this year, because of the transitions that were happening for us, it was more heavy lifting or more work
Do we
on your
pay-
end. Flat rate,
Well-
and you just did more work this year, or do we pay you an hourly rate?
Well, I give you an estimate at the beginning of the year, and that's what I charge you, generally speaking.
Well, thank you then for the extra work that you put in while we were in transition.
I
will-
mean,
I will
but I
say-
also would say that, your team has done a good job. So it takes a little bit of additional, effort, but I mean, at the same time, I think the coordination allowed Jim and his team to do what they had to do. So.
And I will say this past year was an anomaly in that, with the transition and the fact that just about the whole department left. I mean, Jim was holding the fort down by himself for a while.
Yeah, and Jessica started sometime in March, I think. So she was here for a couple weeks and helped finish that up. So next year we'll do much better with that.
Well, thank you to all of you, to Jim and PJ and Matthew for, I would imagine tobacco AUD isn't like the topmost priority of county budget reports. So
It is what it is.
It has to be filed on time. That's the key.
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
it's done by March 31st. So we just make sure that happens. Yeah.
Matt, based on your statements from prior, should we up the tobacco settlement receivable? We've got in here 825.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I think Matthew's unclear as to which Matt you're asking, PJ.
Oh,
Chairman.
I'm sorry, Matt Vanderbeck, based on your.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm sorry, PJ. I didn't know if you wanted me to
I'm
talk.
sorry.
That's okay. Well, I mean, I would think that this is 2023. Yeah, I'm thinking that the trend is showing that it should be higher. That's one of the things. The issue with this historically has been you calculate it, and then by the time we have our meeting and we're able to go through this, you already have you already have the next few years kind of planned out. I think at some point, whether it be this year or next year, you should factor in that that trend is going higher.
Okay. One other comment too, Jim, on the insurance. You're not aware of it, but actually we were able to save about $5,000 a year. Last year or the year before, we'd switched over to NYMER. They were able to tag it on to our existing insurance policy, and it saved us about $5,000 or $6,000 a year.
Yeah, I think I did adjust that. 'Cause I think we've had 15 in that insurance line for a couple of years, and I moved it down to 10 because I also adjusted the interest earnings we had, because we're not going to see that $5,000 for a couple of years anyway.
Yep. Okay.
So what would you suggest, Matt Vanderbeck, in terms of the settlement?
I would move closer to 900,000.
Okay. 875?
I think that's better.
And what does that do to our expense line, or is that would we show it as a net surplus?
Oh, we would increase the interest payment that or the principal, we'd put it in there, I guess, Matt.
Right.
Okay.
So Matthew, and I know this was in the report, but I only got it an hour ago, so I will admit that I did not have a chance to read through all of the reports. If you were to look back to the last 3 years, what was our actual revenue received?
Last 3 years. So let's see, what you received in 2021 for 2020 was so what you received in 2021 was about $963,000. And then it was $890,000 the year before. The year before that, $776,000.
Got it. So I think, Chairman, you're right. An 875 level at least doesn't, because maybe 2020 was an anomaly, right? Maybe it spiked because people were home with COVID and they were smoking more. Does this depend on how many cigarettes are bought? Am I right on that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe everyone was home. They were chain smoking while working from the computer. Now they're back. We're going to go back towards those other numbers. So I agree with the chairman that going up to 9, we didn't even do 9 the prior year. So 875 might be a little more comfortable. And then if we notice the trend continues, then we can always bump it up the following year.
Yep.
So then we would adjust the expense line by 50,000 as well, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I would entertain a motion to accept.
So this is what it would look like.
Okay, very good.
I will move to accept the proposed budget as amended.
Okay, we need a second.
I'll second, Rick.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Anything else, Matt?
No, I think we're good.
DJ?
No, Matt, you may just want to make a comment. I know you don't like this, but what we usually attach to our financials and the fact that if the revenue from tobacco sales takes a drastic dip below, that we have that opinion that we are not, the county is not responsible for that. And that's always a bone of contention, but just a reminder to the committee in case people are new on here.
Well, yeah. So in the financials themselves, it does say in the back of the financial statements that the obligation related to the satisfaction of the bonds is separate from the county. That is in the disclosure. What PJ is referring to for the financial statement audit of the county looks at this as a standalone. You don't combine it as a blended component unit. You treat it as a separate standalone component unit. But under the accounting standards, it basically just says you're supposed to treat it as a blended component unit. So it's something that is in the financial statement audit of the county that you got an opinion from an attorney that says that legally it's not part of the county. So you have a legal opinion that's different than what the accounting standards say. That's all.
I do have a question, and I believe, Chairman, I asked this question last time. I'm new to this group, and I'm still, and I think we meet once a year or twice a year. So we bring in this revenue based on how many cigarettes are sold. What do we do with it? Is it intended to help people quit smoking? Are we doing a campaign through our Department of Health that smoking is bad and you shouldn't buy cigarettes? I mean, what, so like we're bringing in this revenue, and what's the intention of it, and what are we spending it
The
on?
revenue just pays the bond, the debt on the bond. None of this money actually comes into the county to do any activities within the county.
And what is the bond for?
The bond is to, I think the history of this is that we took in the tobacco settlement years ago, whatever year it was, and now we're paying the money that now, I don't know what we use that money for back then. A lot of counties use it for capital and things like that, not related to tobacco.
Got it. So the revenue is not tied to some efforts to stop people from, it has nothing to do with that. The revenue is just something that we get, and then we can do what we wish with it through our regular budget, government services, whatever it is.
And the state's kind of, the state's giving out opioid money this year, and they're treating it a lot differently than they did the tobacco, where you have to use it for opioid, treatments or preventions.
We actually had a meeting about the opioids yesterday, and the discussion brought up about doing whether you could take the money up front versus, take it for the next 30 years. So.
Got it. And not to sound too crass, but in this day and age, if you don't know smoking's bad for you, you probably are living under a rock, but.
Yep, I agree. Anything else? Okay, need a motion to adjourn. And,
So-
Jim, do you have anything else to add, or I'm sorry, I didn't want to.
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, so we have motion by Supervisor Holtley,
Second, Rick.
second Rick, all in favor?
Hi.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you
Thank
all.
you.
Hey, Rick,
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Can you stay on?
I will.